There's a weight some people carry that no one else can see. It sits quietly in the chest, heavy and familiar, like an old companion who never leaves. It's the belief, buried so deep you might not even notice it anymore, that you don't deserve to be happy. Not that happiness is impossible, not that it doesn't exist, but that somehow, for reasons you can't fully name, it wasn't meant for you. Like there's an invisible line drawn around joy, and you've always stood on the wrong side of it, watching others step into warmth while you remain in shadow. Maybe it started small, a moment in childhood when your excitement was met with irritation instead of celebration. Or maybe it was the way love always seemed conditional, like you had to earn it through perfection, through silence, through disappearing just enough to not be a burden. You learned early that your happiness made others uncomfortable, that your needs felt like too much, that maybe if you just asked for less, wanted less, expected less, then you'd finally be worth keeping. You shrunk yourself down until you became a whisper of who you could have been. And somewhere in that shrinking, you convinced yourself it was safer this way. Because if you never expect happiness, you can never be disappointed when it doesn't come. If you never believe you deserve it, then you don't have to face the crushing weight of losing it. It's a kind of psychological armor, thin and fragile, but it's kept you standing, it's kept you functioning, it's kept you from completely falling apart. But here's what no one tells you about that armor. It doesn't just keep pain out, it keeps everything out. Joy, connection, the kind of peace that makes you exhale deeply and think, even for a moment, that maybe life can be gentle, because when you've spent years building walls around your worthiness, those walls don't know the difference between threat and tenderness. This is the psychology of never deserving happiness. And if you've lived it, you already know it's not about logic. You could list 100 reasons why you should feel worthy. You could hear people tell you that you matter, but none of it reaches the place inside where the belief was formed. Because that belief wasn't created by thought. It was created by experience, by survival, by a child's mind trying to make sense of a world that didn't hold them gently enough. Let's go back to the beginning, to where this all takes root. They absorb it from the emotional atmosphere around them, from the way adults respond to their feelings, from the subtle or not so subtle messages about what makes them lovable. If a child's joy is consistently dismissed, if their sadness is treated as inconvenient, if their very presence feels like it requires apology, something devastating happens inside their developing mind. Psychologists call this internalized shame. It's not the same as guilt, which says, I did something wrong. Shame says, I am something wrong. And when that shame forms early enough, it becomes the lens through which you see everything. It colors every experience, every relationship, every moment of potential happiness, with the question. The brain of a child is designed to attach meaning to patterns. If love comes with conditions, the child learns that they must meet those conditions to be worthy. If happiness is followed by punishment or withdrawal, the child learns that happiness is dangerous. If their emotional needs are consistently unmet, they learn that needing anything at all makes them a burden. These aren't conscious lessons. They're encoded in the nervous system, in the implicit memory, in the way the body learns to brace itself against disappointment. And here's what makes it so insidious. These beliefs don't announce themselves. They operate in the background, quiet and constant, shaping your choices in ways you don't even recognize. You might find yourself sabotaging good things just as they start to bloom, pushing people away when they get too close, choosing paths that confirm your unworthiness rather than challenge it, not because you want to suffer, but because suffering feels familiar, and familiarity feels like safety. There's a concept in psychology called the negativity bias. Our brains are wired to pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones because, evolutionarily, remembering danger kept us alive. But for someone who believes they don't deserve happiness, this bias becomes amplified. Every moment of joy feels temporary, fragile, like it could shatter at any second. Every compliment feels hollow. Every good thing feels like a mistake that will inevitably be corrected. You start living in a constant state of waiting for the other shoe to drop. When something good happens, you can't fully enjoy it because you're already anticipating its end. When someone loves you, you can't fully receive it because you're already preparing for when they realize you're not worth it. It's like trying to hold water in your hands while believing you're not allowed to drink. And the cruelest part is how this belief perpetuates itself. When you don't believe you deserve happiness, you unconsciously create circumstances that confirm that belief. You settle for relationships where you're not fully seen. You stay in situations that drain you because leaving feels selfish. You turn down opportunities because you tell yourself someone else deserves them more. And every time you do this, you reinforce the neural pathway that says, "See, I knew I wasn't worthy." But let me tell you something that might feel uncomfortable to hear. This belief, as painful as it is, served a purpose once. It protected you when you were young and powerless, when the people who were supposed to love you couldn't or wouldn't in the way you needed. Your mind had to make sense of that somehow, and the only way a child's mind can make sense of not being loved the way they need is to believe they're not lovable. Not because it's true, but because believing the problem is you means you can try to fix it. If your parents didn't show up, you told yourself you weren't worth showing up for. If your emotions were ignored, you told yourself your feelings didn't matter. If love felt conditional, you told yourself you had to earn it, because the alternative, that the adults in your life were limited, were human, were struggling with their own wounds, was too terrifying for a child to hold. So you made it about you. You took the blame. You carried the shame. And in doing so, you gave yourself the illusion of control. That's the heartbreaking brilliance of the child's mind. It will sacrifice its own sense of worthiness to maintain the belief that love is possible, if only they can be good enough, quiet enough, perfect enough. But that sacrifice has a cost that echoes through decades, because what once helped you survive becomes the very thing that prevents you from living. Now let's talk about how this shows up in adulthood. You've learned to function, you've built a life, but inside there's this constant hum of not enoughness that never quite goes away. You achieve something, and instead of celebrating, you immediately think about what you should have done better. Someone compliments you, and you deflect or minimize because letting it in feels dangerous. You have a moment of pure joy, and almost immediately, the guilt arrives. Who are you to be this happy when others are suffering? Who are you to take up space with your contentment? This is what psychologists call anhedonia, though not in the clinical sense where you can't feel pleasure at all. It's more subtle. It's the inability to fully inhabit happiness when it arrives. You can feel it, but only partially, only from a distance, like you're watching someone else's life through glass. There's always a barrier, always that voice that says, "This isn't for you. Don't get used to it. It won't last." And relationships become particularly complicated, because when you don't believe you deserve love, you either push people away before they can leave you, or you cling to them even when they're hurting you. You become hypervigilant to any sign of rejection. A delayed text becomes proof they're losing interest. A moment of distance becomes confirmation that you were right all along. You're too much, you're not enough, you're fundamentally unlovable. Or you do the opposite. You become the giver, the helper, the one who's always there for everyone else. You earn your place through usefulness, because being needed feels safer than being wanted. If you can make yourself indispensable, maybe they won't leave. If you can prove your worth through service, maybe you won't have to face the terrifying vulnerability of just being loved for existing. But this creates its own prison, because love that has to be earned isn't rest, it's performance. And you're so tired. There's another layer to this that people rarely talk about. When you believe you don't deserve happiness, you often develop an acute sensitivity to others' suffering. You notice pain everywhere. You feel responsible for it. You think that if you allow yourself to be happy while others are hurting, you're somehow betraying them. So you carry their pain as if it's yours. You make yourself small so others can expand. You dim your light so others don't feel overshadowed. This is called empathic distress, and it's different from genuine empathy. Empathy allows you to understand another's pain without losing yourself in it. Empathic distress means you're drowning in other people's emotions while neglecting your own. And here's the truth. Your suffering doesn't actually help anyone else. Your self-denial doesn't make the world better. What it does is create one more person in pain, one more person unable to bring their full light into the world. But the mind that believes it doesn't deserve happiness will find 1,000 reasons to justify its own deprivation. Others have it worse. It will say, "I don't need much." And all of these statements might be true on the surface, but underneath them is the deeper truth. You're afraid that if you reach for more, you'll lose even what little you have. Afraid that wanting joy makes you selfish, demanding, too much. Let me share something about the neuroscience of this. When you experience something good, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. But in people who've developed chronic patterns of self-denial, this system becomes dysregulated. The brain has learned that joy is dangerous, that it leads to disappointment or punishment. So over time, it dampens the reward response as a protective mechanism. You literally train your brain to feel less positive emotion because feeling it fully has hurt you before. This is why you might feel numb even in moments that should be joyful, why you can't fully celebrate your own wins, why happiness feels foreign, almost uncomfortable, like a coat that doesn't fit right. Your nervous system has adapted to expect deprivation, and when something good happens, it doesn't know how to integrate it. The incongruence between what's happening and what you believe you deserve creates a kind of psychological static. And here's where it gets even more complex. Sometimes, the belief that you don't deserve happiness is tangled up with identity. If you've spent years defining yourself through your struggles, through what you've survived, through your role as the strong one or the struggling one, then allowing yourself to be happy feels like losing yourself. Who are you if you're not suffering? Who are you if you're not carrying weight? The mind resists this shift not because it wants pain, but because it needs coherence. And if your entire sense of self has been built around unworthiness, dismantling that belief feels like dismantling who you are. This is why healing from this pattern isn't just about positive thinking or gratitude journals. Though those things can help, it's about something deeper. It's about going back to those early moments where the belief was formed and meeting that younger version of yourself with the truth they needed to hear then. You didn't have to earn love. Your needs weren't too much. The problem was never you. Psychologists call this reparenting work. It's the process of giving yourself what you didn't receive, not from a place of blame toward those who failed you, but from a place of compassion toward the part of you that's still waiting for permission to exist fully. This work is slow, it's not linear. There will be days when you believe you've healed, and then something small will trigger the old belief, and you'll feel like you're back at the beginning. But here's what's important to understand. That regression isn't failure, it's information. Every time the old pattern shows up, it's an opportunity to practice something different, to notice the thought, I don't deserve this, and gently challenge it. Not by forcing yourself to believe you do deserve it, but by questioning where that belief came from. Is it true? Is it yours? Or is it an echo of someone else's limitations, someone else's fear, someone else's inability to love you the way you needed? And slowly, over time, something begins to shift. Moments when you receive a compliment and let it land instead of deflecting. Moments when something beautiful happens and you don't immediately wait for it to end. But they're proof that the neural pathway of unworthiness isn't permanent, that the brain can learn new patterns, that you can teach yourself, slowly and gently, that happiness isn't a threat. One of the most powerful practices in this healing is learning to sit with positive emotion without needing to do anything about it. This sounds simple, but it's revolutionary for someone who's spent their life bracing against joy. The next time something good happens, try this. Notice it. Feel it in your body. Don't analyze it or question it or try to figure out if you deserve it. Just let it be there, even if it only lasts for a breath, even if the old voice starts up immediately after. That moment of allowing, that moment of not pushing happiness away, is the beginning of rewiring. Another crucial piece is learning to differentiate between guilt and boundary. You might feel guilty for taking time for yourself, for saying no, for prioritizing your own needs. But guilt in these moments isn't a moral compass. It's the old belief system trying to pull you back into the familiar pattern of self-sacrifice. Real growth means learning to feel that guilt and move forward anyway, not by ignoring it, but by recognizing it for what it is, an outdated protection mechanism that no longer serves you. And here's something you need to hear. You are allowed to change the rules you've been living by. You are allowed to decide that your happiness matters just as much as everyone else's. You are allowed to want things, to need things, to take up space with your joy. They won't need you to stay small to make them comfortable. And the ones who do, they're not your people. This might mean losing relationships that were built on your self-denial. It might mean disappointing people who've come to expect your endless availability. It might mean facing their anger or confusion or withdrawal, and that's painful. But staying small to keep others comfortable is a betrayal of yourself, and you've already spent too many years betraying yourself to survive. Now it's time to learn what it feels like to be on your own side. There's a concept in attachment theory called earned, secure attachment. It means that even if you didn't receive secure love as a child, you can develop it as an adult through healing relationships, therapy, or deep inner work. You can become the secure base for yourself that you never had. You can learn to self-soothe, to self-validate, to offer yourself the compassion that was missing. This doesn't erase what happened, but it changes what happens next. And gradually, as you practice this, something remarkable occurs. Not because you've convinced yourself of your worthiness through affirmations or logic, but because you've started living differently. You've started making choices that honor your needs. You've started letting good things in. You've started noticing that the world doesn't collapse when you take up space. It's safe to be seen. It's safe to be you. But let's be honest about something. This process isn't comfortable. There will be moments when choosing happiness feels terrifying, when the old, familiar pain feels safer than the unknown territory of joy. There will be moments when you sabotage yourself just as things start to get good, when you push people away or create problems where none exist, when you find a reason why you can't possibly deserve what you're receiving. This is normal. This is the nervous system doing what it was trained to do. Protect you from disappointment by creating it preemptively. The key is to recognize this pattern without judgment, to see it happening and say, "Oh, there it is again. That's the old belief trying to keep me safe." And then, gently, to make a different choice. Not by forcing yourself to feel differently, but by acting differently, despite the fear. By allowing joy even when every cell in your body is screaming that it won't last. This is what healing looks like. Not the absence of the old patterns, but the presence of new choices. Not the disappearance of unworthiness, but the willingness to act as if you're worthy even when you don't feel it yet. The more you practice receiving, the more natural it becomes. The more you practice allowing happiness, the less foreign it feels. The neural pathways rewire not through belief, but through repetition. And somewhere in this process, something profound happens. You realize that the happiness you've been denying yourself wasn't actually about whether you deserved it or not. It was about whether you could survive it, whether you could let yourself have something good and not be destroyed when it inevitably changed or ended. Because everything changes, everything ends. But that doesn't mean it wasn't worth having. This is the final piece of healing. Learning to hold happiness lightly, without grasping, without trying to make it permanent. Learning to enjoy the moment without needing it to last forever. Learning to love without demanding guarantees. Because when you believe you don't deserve happiness, you're not just protecting yourself from loss. You're protecting yourself from life itself. And life, with all its uncertainty and impermanence, is still worth showing up for. So, here's what I want you to know. If you've spent years believing you don't deserve happiness, you're not broken. You're not defective. You're not too damaged to heal. You learned this belief in response to experiences that made it feel true. Not through force, but through the slow, patient work of showing yourself again and again that you are worthy of the very things you've been denying yourself. You are worthy of rest, of joy, of being celebrated, of taking up space, of having needs and expressing them without apology, of being loved not for what you do or how you serve, but simply because you exist. This might be the hardest thing you've ever had to believe, harder than any external achievement, harder than any recognition from others, because it requires you to give yourself something you've spent a lifetime believing you couldn't have. But the truth is, you've always deserved it. Not because of anything you've done or not done. Not because you've suffered enough, or worked hard enough, or been good enough, but because worthiness isn't something you earn, it's something you are. It's your birthright as a human being who exists on this planet, and no amount of past pain, no number of mistakes, no depth of unworthiness you've internalized can change that fundamental truth. So maybe today, just for this moment, you can let yourself believe it. Not forever, not with certainty, but just for right now. You can let the guard down, just an inch. You can let something good in, just a fraction. You can allow yourself to feel happy without immediately questioning whether you're allowed to be. And if the old voice starts up, if the familiar belief tries to pull you back, you can thank it for trying to protect you and then gently set it aside. Because you don't need that protection anymore. You're not that powerless child trying to make sense of why love felt conditional. You're an adult now, with the capacity to choose differently. To love yourself the way you needed to be loved then, to give yourself permission to be happy, not because you've finally earned it, but because you're finally ready to receive it. And maybe, just maybe, that's where the real healing begins. Not in the absence of the wound, but in the presence of your own compassion for it. Not in erasing the past, but in refusing to let it write your future. Not in deserving happiness through achievement, but in claiming it through the simple, radical act of believing you're allowed to exist in joy. So, let it in. Let the good things touch you. Let the love reach you. Let the happiness land, even if it scares you, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if every old belief is screaming that it can't be real, because it is real, and it's yours, and you've always deserved it. The work now isn't to become someone new. It's to remember who you were before the world taught you that you had to earn your place in it. That small child who laughed freely, who wanted without shame, who believed joy was their natural state. They're still inside you. They've been waiting all this time for you to come back for them. To tell them, finally, that they deserve to be here, fully and completely, without apology. And when you do that, when you offer yourself that kindness, something shifts. The armor starts to crack, the walls begin to soften, and beneath all that protection, beneath all those years of believing you didn't deserve happiness, you find what was always there. Worthy of all the beautiful things they've spent so long denying themselves, that person is you, and they've been waiting for this moment. The moment when you finally choose them, when you finally decide that your happiness matters, when you finally understand that deserving was never the question. You just forgot for a while, and now you're remembering, and that remembering is everything.